Roshan, thanks for coming back. The world doesn't know, but to set context, we recorded an episode, I think, a couple of weeks back or 3 weeks back.
Yeah,
We had a great 2.5 hour chat
about everything.
about everything,
Yeah.
and as candid as it can get. And then, unfortunately, an incident happened here with our editor. We lost the footage, and then
Yeah.
I hope they told you what happened.
Yeah. I mean, there was some kind of burglary involved and stuff,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So,
all on film. You should actually put that film also.
Yeah.
That clip in here for people to see. But
like cue intense music.
but incredible. There was a guy who walked in to where he was staying, picked up his bag, walked out. On the way out, gave a peace out sign to the CCTV.
Really?
Yeah, to the CCTV cameras, and then just absconded. And then couldn't get an FIR going because the cops didn't register it. Didn't want.
Dude's living his most authentic life.
Yeah, exactly. So it was hectic, but yeah, all that happened. So glad you agreed to come back.
Hey, no worries, man.
I can only-
I'm a sucker for good conversation and
Great.
coffee. So, yeah,
Which is better?
both.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, both together.
Most people pick coffee. But great. Just for the few people who don't know you, if you could just quickly give your origin story, that would be a
Sure.
great way to sort of get started.
So, I've been with startups for about 16 years now, right? Both as an early stage employee and a founder, and now back as an early stage employee across various roles, sales, product, and marketing. Been with startups from the time it wasn't very cool, right? Neither landlords nor prospective father-in-laws looked at us very kindly then, to now where startups are like living room conversation. Started podcasting about 4 years back, just out of like sheer curiosity, and about 800 episodes later, I have two podcasts. One is called Bharat Vartha, which focuses on politics, policy, and culture related to India. We look at things from an indigenous lens. And then one is called The Startup Operator, where I curate conversations with founders, operators, and investors from the Indian ecosystem. That aside, I've lived in Bangalore pretty much all my life, except for a very brief stint in the refinery where I was pushing switches and pulling levers in like 40-degree heat. And I've kind of seen the city evolve, right? I mean, like from a pensioner's paradise to like an IT city to what it is today, like a startup city and so on. So I've had like a ringside view of all of these changes, socially, culturally, and economically, and so on. So yeah, that's me.
So I remember you mentioning you tried your stint with the Jamnagar Refinery, going into petroleum and
Right.
and that side of the world, but then you didn't like it. 3 months later, you sort of came back.
Yeah.
And you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do. It was a very interesting story. This was, I think, 2008.
Yeah, this was 2008. And look, I mean, I'm a nuts and bolts engineer, right? I'm an instrumentation guy. And there were very few avenues for instrumentation folks at that time, right? I mean, you either went into like one of these oil and gas or like some other unmentionable, core industry, right? Where you were like literally like a cog in like the entire giant wheel that kind of move things around. Oil and gas was, I was dating this girl at the time, and her father was in oil and gas, and I thought like, you know what, like,
Is that the reason why you chose oil?
I mean, it was all planned out in my head, right? I mean, like two birds, one stone sort of a thing, right? So all of that. And I moved to Jamnagar without a damn clue in my head as to what it actually means to be like an instrumentation engineer. And I quickly realized it was about heating stuff, measuring the stuff that's been heated, and then like intervening where things get out of hand. Okay, literally that. So wasn't a lot of fun. Spent about a couple of months or so, and then I just like had it, man. I mean, I just came back. And it sucked that I missed a train, on the way back. Imagine like, this giant farewell. Everyone's like, oh, this guy's going back to Bangalore. He's going to live his life now and everything. And then I'm back 2 days later, right? I'm like showing up with the same goddamn bags. And they're like, what the fuck happened? And you're like, no, I'm sorry, I missed a train. Like, unfortunately, every train there is called Gandhi something express, right? So,
Is it? I don't know that.
Yeah. I mean, so I remember I had to board this Gandhi Dham express, and the guy had too much pan or mawa in his mouth to tell me clearly which platform, right? And like everything else was, it was weird to figure things out, and I just waited at the wrong platform for like 8 hours, okay?
Right. This is in Jamnagar?
Sad story. Yeah. No, I went to Ahmedabad to board the plane.
Right.
Yeah. board the train, sorry.
Right.
And then I came back and then, yeah.
Got it.
I've been
I've
in
heard
Bangalore.
Jamnagar is like its own city by itself.
Now, yeah.
Back
I mean,
then?
of course. Dude, I mean, I went 16 kilometers from our hostel to watch Golden Compass in Hindi. Okay, that was our entertainment that time. And then there was this Reliance Mall where you could buy all this like shady, like, athleisure. I mean, I don't think they called it athleisure then. I mean, it was just like some,
Casual.
yeah,
So that was like, yeah, so 16. So I think now it's a lot better. It's all within the campus and there's a lot.
I mean, there's a lot that's happened in Jamnagar in that
there are like
time,
hotels
right?
inside the campus.
Yeah, everything. Like, so then, I mean, it was just like this giant road and then there were things around it at various, distances. And the refinery was one and the hostel was one. But now I'm sure like it's like a lot more, there's a lot more happening for sure. It's been a while.
So you come back and then what is the plan? To start something or to work somewhere?
The plan is to just get out of home, right? And get my dad off my back, basically, right? So, I mean, like we do, I mean, everyone else is applying to companies, all random ones, and I also apply. And I joined this like really small startup, about 20 people or so.
Right.
And I thought, okay, you know what? Let me just like, A, I get a salary, and B, I get to get out of home, right? And let me just be here till about November or so. I'll write my CAT exam, like whatever, the rest of us, and defer any meaningful decision making by a couple of years, right? So that's what happened. And I just ended up staying there for about 4 years, man. Did a bunch of random roles, like the early versions of what you could call growth and so on. Had some really, really smart colleagues, right? Folks who went on to found companies like Join McKinsey, etc., like really smart folks. And I had a great time. I mean, I didn't know it was a startup, but I think that was like the taste of first blood, right? So first taste of blood. Yeah.
Right. So this is what year again?
2008.
Again. Okay. So same time.
Yeah, it was also like, I didn't have much of a choice, right? I mean, this was the time of the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
Right. So it was insane. So
exactly, because I remember, I mean, I was still, I think, graduating school. So it was a little different back then, to be honest. High school, I'm not that young. But then I remember that it was such a prominent conversation in the world because we hadn't seen something like that in our lifetime at least. And I speak to a lot of people in our line of work and others, and they say that it was like COVID was bad, but we always knew that the whole world was in it. But when the financial markets fell, I think there was a ripple effect across, and it was just a very different type of uncertain times.
Yeah, I mean,
to start something at that time or to look at it from that lens, it would be even harder, right? Because even startups are not that big, by the way.
Yeah, it was like a bizarre time, okay? Because I joined work in July and then I think it was August or September and Lehman crashed.
Yeah.
Okay. Unthinkable. Yeah. I mean, Lehman was like this legendary...
200-year-old organization.
Yeah, legendary company, right? So Lehman crashed and then we all had a crash course in like economic cycles and like CDOs and mortgages and all of that stuff, right? I mean... it was crazy. And to make matters worse, I was selling, recruitment services. Okay. This is at a time when, people were like downsizing and literally firing people. And I was calling them and saying, hey, you know what? Now's the best time to hire. There's just loads of talent waiting for you to hire, right? So it was a crazy time. And as bad as things were, I just realized that things always bounce back. Okay. I mean, call it human resilience or like the nature of the markets or what have you, By 2009, February or March, I mean, people were just back with a bang.
Yeah.
Like I remember product companies hiring more people than they ever hired before, right? So fantastic stuff. So I think that's the one thing that kept me sanguine during COVID, because I knew that no matter how bad things get, COVID was really bad, okay? For the period that until, the 21 or whatever, I think it was really bad because the uncertainty was like 10x more. And look, I mean, at least during the financial crisis, you could catch up for a beer, okay? And like bitch about how things were. But that was also not possible. There was a lot of isolation and so on. But I knew that things will get better. I mean, if only I had put more money in the markets.
What made you think so?
It's just the thing is, right? I mean, if you listen to Ray Dalio speak, for example, right, he says that, look, I mean, this happens over and over and over again, right? Everything that you're seeing right now, like there's a line, right? History may not repeat, but it rhymes. Okay, so there's a precedence to a lot of things that have happened, right? So again, these are like 8-10 year cycles that keep happening, right? There's an unwinding of the economy, and what goes up will come down, and so on and so forth, right? So I was sure, like I was confident to an extent that I mean, this is not like the end of humanity for sure.
No, I think that's just the nature of human endeavor also, right? We always want to move forward. I remember when COVID hit and the first lockdown happened, I would tell people human beings always default to behavior. So unless this is like some 3-year, 4-year COVID lockdown kind of scenario where you're forced to stay indoors for that long, you would all obviously default and come back to original behavior, which is life would move on. Of course, I think it made a lot of difference for kids who were that back then in school and college. Maybe they lost out on a lot of it. But
I think some of it is irreversibly changed, man.
Some of it, like, because I think it happened at that critical age for some people. But I think, and for the other section of society, I feel what happened would have anyway happened. It just accelerated. For example, the digital adoption, right? The way we used tech, where we used apps for groceries and stuff like that, which we saw older people do, for example. Senior citizens were taking to it. I think that would have happened in 10 years, but COVID just accelerated it.
Force multiplier.
We had the saying in our line of work, we would say 30 years of digital transformation happened in 3 months. In that first wave of
You didn't
COVID.
have a choice.
You didn't have a choice. So, but I agree with you. I think this is the way the world works. I think we've been through 2 now in our lifetime in terms of the crash as well as COVID. And I think both of the times that the takeaways from both the events is the fact that humans will always come back to do it.
Let's hope there is no mass reset in our lifetimes, at least, right? Or ever,
One more,
for example.
You mean? Or
no, like a point, from which we can't go back,
But what can that be? Like, what kind of an event?
I don't know, man. I mean, lately I've also been thinking about like nuclear winter and so on and so forth, right? And some of the stuff that with AI that we're doing. I mean, I think it'll fundamentally change what it means to be human.
True.
Yeah,
I had someone on the podcast recently. He's a product manager. He was a Glance and a bunch of other places. Now he's with the new startup. So he was talking about this, about how he feels by 2045 we'll hit singularity. I'm a little skeptical. So the entire conversation, I was skeptical and he was pro AI. And
see, with both of these, right? I mean, you kind of think of like the worst eventuality, right? Both on the nuclear front and the AI front. My contention is it does not have to reach the worst eventuality, right? But even some function of that is enough for us to like sort of reset a little bit. Like, see, this whole mutually assured destruction, right, has been like it's a sort of like a bluff in poker, right? I mean, I know that, you don't have those cards, but I'm not willing to take those chances, right? And so it's like a face-off between nuclear nations so far, right? I mean, like, which is why they say, nuclear warheads have been the single biggest deterrents for war, right? As such, very ironical as it is, right? But it just takes one person to, do a targeted strike, and that's like no longer off the table. You know what I mean?
True.
Right? So it does not have to be like this mass, Russia pointing its missiles towards the US and US like going crazy or something like that. It does not have to be that. I mean, it can be very targeted strikes that just means that the nuclear option is on the table again, right? And similarly with AI, right? Look, I'm hiring for a product marketing person right now, and I cannot reliably tell you that the product marketing person will be better than ChatGPT in certain respects.
Right.
Okay? I mean, we've gotten to that point right now.
Of course.
Right? So I literally have had to rethink the job description to figure out how this person will add value. Right? Now, you look at a lot of tech problems that are bounded, okay? I mean, software development, so on and so forth. Even if the productivity goes up by one order of magnitude, right? They will need to hire whatever X number of people by 10, right? Think about your Infosys or TCS or whatever, right? When you're hiring 2.5-3 lakh engineers. I mean, even if you just hire by 10, right? It's like you're looking at 30,000 engineers and 400 or 500 campuses across India, right? I mean,
Right.
what are the rest of them going to do, man? I mean, this whole transition period, right?
It's going to be tough.
And we are used to funneling pretty much everyone in software, right? Like I'm an instrumentation guy who ended up in IT, like in software, right?
Is that because there's most opportunity there?
I mean, that was the one that was hiring the most number of people, right? So I will hazard a guess and say that the ulta is going to happen. Now everyone is going to go into manufacturing services,
Right.
Because and let's hope that lever kicks in, because otherwise, what are you going to do with all these engineers?
Yeah. No, I think these are cyclic again, because when one department or industry has demand and then there's oversupply, then there's some bleed out that has to go elsewhere. And now so okay, just I'll ask you this. You said you're trying to recraft a JD, for example. So what are you doing differently now when you want to hire somebody?
I am indexing more on discretion and judgment, right? Where do I need more of that? Like, for example, let's say aligning sales and product teams, right? That's not a ChatGPT job, right? I need to get someone who can think strategically about both of these, for instance, right? Having maybe like 40 customer conversations. Now, these conversations are not always online, right? I need someone who can like go and dig deeper, ask those follow-up questions, craft that context for us to at least figure out what prompts we need to give ChatGPT, right? Those are acutely human things, okay? And there are other things which are more on the empathy side of things, right? Which you can't solve with AI at this point of time, right? And all of this seems like kumbaya or whatever, right? But this is exactly why you'll hire humans, because for everything else, I mean, if AI hasn't caught up already, it will, right? The way it's trending, for sure.
Got it.
So
So more emphasis on core human skills, which probably.
decision making, man,
Yeah.
your taste.
But
Right.
tell me, this is still you can filter it out and do it to a certain extent if you're hiring someone at mid-level or even senior level. But if you're getting people at the entry level, it's hard, right?
Look, that's the thing, right? I mean, I mean, this week has been a bit unsettling for me, okay? Because I'm always the guy who bets on generalists and people who are early in their career who can hustle hard.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't need that now.
You need more specialists?
I mean, I don't need that, basically. Like, I don't want someone who will take like a brief from me and like turn around the best first draft possible. Because I know that ChatGPT can do like 10 times better than that.
And ChatGPT is basically just you. It's you in a
Me or
different
maybe like
light.
someone on my team like prompting, right? I mean, that's enough. So, I mean, heck, I was that kid, right? I was that kid who was early in my career and who said, look, I don't know things, but I will hustle really hard and I'll do the best first draft possible. But I don't have a job now. Which is like bizarre, right? I mean, like, and so, I mean, I feel like I owe to that kid. And so I'm still talking to a bunch of these folks who are like generalist profiles early in their career, who's like, I'm going to do my whatever. And I'm trying to figure out what other skills they can bring to the table that can beat this bloody ChatGPT thing, which I like and I hate, right? But it's hard, man.
So tell me, because I mean, I use ChatGPT quite a lot. If I need to quickly update myself, basically what I would do on search, I'm doing on ChatGPT now. That's one. The other thing I do is basically if I need some structured information, then I put in prompts for that. It's not really worked for anybody here from our perspective of trying to creatively ideate and bring a solution on board from a communication perspective, right? I mean, an agency, what you do is you get a brief and then you're trying to be creative. And this is my theory. I was talking about this too in the last episode we shot, which is I think there are 0 to 1 functions and 1 to 1 functions. So 1 to 1 it does really well. Like if I put in a draft of something that's already there and if I need that replicated, great.
Exactly.
But 0 to 1 it can't. It's like we haven't found too much success. Maybe because what we're looking for is deep rooted in human insight, the process of coming up with a unique idea, which has to sound and be unique. And sometimes the only way to do that is to artificially manufacture it on the spot. So I don't think GPT's got there yet.
Yeah. See, I mean, rather than focus on like what it's not going to do, I mean, it's good to be aware of those things, right? I mean, it's not going to replace creative thinking, for example, right? It's not going to do those things. I over-index on the things that it's like really good at doing, right? This one-to-one stuff that you mentioned, right? If I have a piece of paragraph, can I replicate that same piece of paragraph in the same style, kind of articulation across 3 other scenarios? I can do that,
Yeah.
right? And it'll give me a draft that is as good as ready that I need to edit, and it'll take me like 50% less time, right? At least it'll take me 1% less.
Yeah,
Let me put it that way, right? Now, Perplexity is amazing, right? If I want to like look at the top 3 problems that buy now pay later companies are facing in LATAM, right? Which I have to read like one Accenture report, one McKinsey report, and some other goddamn report, right? And go into this page and like collate this information, consolidate all these different data points. I don't need to do that. Perplexity will give me like the top 3. It'll give me sources also.
Yeah.
Done, right? So those are a couple of things, and then like ideas, man. Ideas like, tomorrow I'm doing a product hour, right? Where I'm bringing the sales and customer folks along with the product guys together on one call to just like hash things out, right? What are you hearing in the market versus what we're building? What is the delta difference that we can figure out? Okay, I came up with like 4 meaningful prompts that I can, nudge people to like start speaking. I give those 4 prompts to, GPT, and I say like, look, here is the session that I'm organizing with all of these folks, and this is my stated objective, right? Here are 3 questions. Can you give me another few? Fucking gave me like 10, man. And beautiful questions.
Got it. Yeah, 100%.
Right. See, it's a linear extension of what I'm thinking right now, but to extend my thinking linearly also, right? It takes time, right? It takes effort.
Yeah.
It's saving me that. Right. So there are these jumps and shifts. Like, I hope someday that, I'll be able to prompt saying that, GPT, give me a marketing plan to generate like, $3 million of pipeline, and it gives me a near accurate plan. I hope, right? But it's not there yet. That's fine, right? But think about how much time and energy and effort it's saving on just linearly thinking from where you are right now. You know? Phenomenal.
Right.
Phenomenal.
This is very interesting because when you're young and when you join a workforce, right, it typically takes you 1, 2, sometimes even 3 years to actually just learn or understand how to work. Because you're fresh out of college. There's a sense of casualness turning to professional, and it's not always easy to understand that.
That's a very important point, okay? Like, can you find your way around Bangalore by yourself without Google Maps? I mean, I've lived here all my life, okay? And default, I turned the damn maps on.
Yeah.
Okay? We're soon going to have a bunch of people come into the workplace who have never known a world before GPT.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a second.
Huge. So, I've thought about this.
Huge fucking difference, man. I mean, like, look, I've had to scour through reports and reports and reports to like find the data, right?
So, you're fast.
You know how it is, right? When you do a certain thing, right, it's not just to achieve the ends of that, but it's also what you learn along the way, right? You learn how to filter sources, you learn what data is important, you learn how to position the data, etc., etc., etc. Now, if I were to give you that ready answer, fine, you're going to get this, but you're going to miss all of these different things that you learned along the way.
Correct. So precisely, the problem would come if you get everything given so easily. You'll forget how to hunt. I think it's the same thing.
Exactly.
So how do you prepare? 2 ways, right? One is as an organization, how do you prepare? Because it's going to be challenging to induct people into the workforce and teach them an additional layer of critical thinking, which is essentially what this is in some ways. At the same time, even for them or the new generation that's passing out and wanting jobs, it's an added layer that they'll need to figure out on their own. And the problem is every time a shift like this happens in culture or in the world, the immediate generation that's going through it are the ones who often fail, can't adapt, and then are blamed as the worst or as the ones that didn't, sort of be able to figure anything out for that matter. So what is the solution from both ends? How do both sides look for it? What's the ideal meeting ground in the future, maybe 5 years from now?
See, I think you have to acknowledge reality, right? I mean, like, as the kids say, I mean, there's plenty of people who are in this mode of cope, okay? So it's like, no, it doesn't do as much and this and that. Boss, it's reality, right? So if you're hiring for a particular role, imagine that role to be person plus GPT, okay? So, and now think about what the person has to do. Because, like I mentioned, literally I've had to like relook that JD which I wrote. Okay? And think about why I need a person to do any of these things. And what will that person do? And then what skills are required for those things that I expect them to do. Right? And then if you look at people who are entering the workforce, on like doing your work on GPT is like playing on cheat mode. Okay?
Yeah.
For better or for worse. If you're a purist and you say, no, I'm going to like, whatever, scour the internet like I had to, right? I mean, it's going to teach you certain things.
Yeah.
But remember that you're playing the game along with folks who are playing on cheat mode.
Yeah.
Okay? And so it's for you to sort of like decide when and what you need to do, right? I mean, but I was just having this conversation with a kid who's in the third year of engineering, okay? And, he's like, oh, companies are not coming to campus to hire. And I'm like, boss, dude, you better start thinking about this differently,
Yeah.
right? Because the piece of paper that you get at the end of engineering, I think it stopped being valuable about 5 years back. Really, right? When people said that, look, I mean, you just like take this test and like you can join us. So it stopped being valuable about 4 or 5 years back, and it's going to become like it's going to tend to being worse and worse and worse, like almost signaling nothing in no amount of time, right? I mean, like very short amount of time, right? So everything is going to matter is proof of work, right? Now you have a window, right? You have a window of 1, 2, 3 years maybe where you can use GPT, you can use Claude, you can use like 5 other things that perhaps only 20% of the people or 10%. I'm being very charitable and say like 10% of the people know about, right? Use that to produce proof of work, right? And who the hell cares, man? I mean, like all engineering managers know that today, if they're hiring someone, they know that, people are using AI to produce this code. As long as I'm good enough to like justify the code that I've written, I'm not like completely like a monkey and I have no idea like what gibberish is on the screen, right? I'm completely like, I'm like, hey, this is what came out type of thing, right? If you use your intellect a little bit, you now have superpowers.
Yeah.
Absolute superpowers. Dude, I mean, I'm looking at Claude demos and everything, right? I mean, you upload a screenshot of something and it's generating freaking code, man. Right? I mean, insane. Like, I know maybe that code is not like production ready, right? But think about it, huh? Someone with some reasonable experience will work like 10x faster because of that,
Yeah.
right? Because maybe all he has to do is edit,
Correct.
right?
So
Changes the game.
if all of us retain our jobs and if all of us retain our work and we all get 10x faster by the function of having AI, then will not the world's collective view be that we can do things or achieve 10x the better results that we have right now? For example, we can try and do things that we haven't done before. For example, I think manufacturing gets faster, manufacturing gets better, we write better code because now that's creating better software, better products. It's a constant evolution on every front, right? So for example, Elon said he wants to live in Mars, I think by 2040, 2030, something like that. We're approaching it, but maybe that's cut short in terms of time. So can we go then and start colonizing other planets, for example? So do you see that being the way forward? Because I feel we don't know how to slow down as a species.
can't.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
So if we get AI and if it say assume hypothetically replaces 2 employees in a team, right? We won't stop there. We'll try to sort of keep those 2 and achieve that much more results, or might cut down on 1, or might even cut down on the 2, but still want to operate at the same rate at which we were. And as a function of which, that greed that is inherently in us at a I think a species level will not want to stop, but we want to push more. So as a function of which, you will create more opportunities, create more jobs, create things that we sort of don't have in record today.
For sure.
Right? Like 20 years back, no one was doing this.
Yeah.
Today, people have podcasting as a career. So it's an example of what can come out of expansion or evolution on one front.
Yeah.
So I feel it's going to be more like that.
It's a feature, not a bug, that we always want more.
Yeah.
I mean, man's nature is expansionary, right? I mean,
Correct.
whether it's like moving from one continent to another, or whether from one mode of transport to another, or perhaps ultimately from Earth to another. I mean, that's just the nature of the universe, I suppose. Nature of man at the heart of it, right?
Yeah.
And Look, I mean, I'm still optimistic that I hope this is a positive sum game, right? I mean, it does not have to be that, there is this massive divide between haves and have-nots. But I'm also like
But that will
pragmatic
happen.
enough to understand that might happen, maybe for a transitionary period at least, right? Um, I don't know, man. It all depends on the kind of leadership that we have, I
Yeah.
feel.
See, if you look at it, internet wasn't accessible to all, right? Till 2016, where Geo came in and made it accessible at a low cost.
See, but then think about the number of things that the internet democratized, right? Access, information, services.
Exactly.
Like
So,
crazy, man.
but there was a period for about what 20, 25 years when 24 years roughly when internet was around, but its penetration, at least in our market, for example,
Yeah.
in India wasn't that high because I think we didn't
Until 2016 maybe.
Yeah, right. And Geo came in and changed because it is really really cheap.
Yeah.
Right now, I think even with AI, I don't think it's accessible to all at all scale.
See, everything will tend to becoming a utility at some
Yeah.
point, okay? From innovation to utility.
Correct.
Right? Computing devices were a true innovation, right? I mean, there's, that whole quote with IBM executives laughing at how many people will have computers in the world, right? I mean, it was some few tens of thousands, not like millions or billions, right?
Yeah.
As it is now, right?
Yeah.
So computing started as an innovation, today it's a utility, right? Internet started as an innovation, it's a utility. Similarly, AI has started as an innovation, it will ultimately become a utility, right? Form factor may change, like how you consume it, what you use it for, etc., but it will become ubiquitous, right?
Yeah.
So I am still optimistic on that front that a lot of these things will become utilities and it'll just be like taken for granted.
Yeah. And when that happens, yes, then I think that the real impact of it on the, like, if you look at it, Uber could not have made the penetration that it had in India in 2007, 2008, because I don't think the internet landscape was the way it was, right? For example, or Ola or any of the others, even Flipkart for that matter. So even the true power of AI, for it to impact society and for us all to move forward, it will need the lowest strata to start adopting or using it or getting access to it. And
Yeah.
price will be the biggest factor there. And I feel at some point somebody
Any
will.
mass innovation, anything at scale, right? At population scale, let's say in the case of India, right? I mean, it has to like you have to view things that way, right? I mean, like why Uber and Ola? UPI would not have been possible without that, right? I mean, like today,
Yeah,
something
exactly.
that
But UPI also
I
needed.
seriously marvel. Okay, I mean, like even like yesterday or something, I was at like a tea shop and she said a certain number and I credited and she said you're ₹2 short and I did a ₹2 transaction. I'm like, fuck. I mean,
Yeah, I remember back in the
I'm
day.
transacting
you had
like ₹2,
Yeah, yeah.
right, on the phone.
Back in the day, you would have had to pay 5 and take 3 chocolates with you.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, by the way, the market for those chocolates are
Yeah,
like dead.
yeah, very bad, very sad.
Yeah.
they were changed essentially.
Corollary.
Exactly. But on the same point, right? I think the adoption of UPI also happened because of demonetization.
Right.
I think that also played a huge role.
That's an inflection for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, man, I mean, all of these will tend to become utilities. And see, like any of the things you take for granted, right, today would have put you in the top 1% of the 1% of the 1% 50 years back. 50, 60 years back.
Right.
Think of the number of things that, like, by all, like, if you consider like the world itself today, I mean, think about what someone who you might call like a middle class person today enjoys. I mean, they would perhaps be like 10x more richer and living a more luxurious life than any of the noblemen in like the I won't even say middle ages, right? I would say like 200 years back, 100 years back,
100%.
right? So that's just how the world moves. I think the baseline keeps getting reset, right?
Yeah.
Look at the amount of poverty we've solved over the last whatever time. It's
I read
crazy.
a stat just recently. 100 years ago, the percentage of population that was classified by those standards then to be in poverty was something like 80%.
Fuck.
And today, I mean, it's significantly better. I mean, some countries like us, we still have that problem.
Yeah.
But the largest
No,
of
but
largest
India
ones,
is like, see, even India, I mean, if you look at like numbers, right, percentage wise, it's come down drastically.
yeah, it has.
Drastically, right? But the baseline keeps like shifting, right?
Yeah.
Which is why obviously you need like social security and so on and so forth, like
And
to
it's also a function
bring
of our
people up.
population. I think that's
Yeah.
also expanding at a rapid pace, so it'll pull that line with you. So I think there's an effect there too. But regardless, coming back to the point, so what according to you should a young person do if they want to get into say a SaaS or a product field? If they are graduating today, they're 22, coming out of an engineering college, what should be their
It's a
go-to?
tough question, man. I mean, it's a tough question. I wish I knew the answer myself, right? Like, forget about like some kid who's just coming to the workforce right now. I mean, I don't know what I have to do to retain my job in 5 years. Like, really, I'm just being totally honest, right? I mean, it's something that I think about often, like in terms of what skills I need to have to sort of, you know, be relevant and so on and so forth. But
Right.
it's super tough, right? So one is that I would just look at like very distinctly human things that you know that you can develop, right? Taste, for example, right? Like and taste. I mean, a taste is not just a matter of aesthetic. It's not just a matter of like arts or something like that, right? It can mean in everything. Like I can look at a piece of copy and like it can just be off to me. It's like a visceral reaction that I get, okay? Because I've probably seen like, I don't know, 10,000 of those, right? Over the last 15, 16 years. That I know when I see something off, I mean, I feel it, right? I mean, I can't even explain it sometimes, right? So I think taste is something you need to develop. Second, I think you just have to ingrain your work with whatever AI things are around you. Like I said, I mean, it's like playing the game on cheat mode and you don't want to sit out of it for sure, right? And look, there are certain things only experience can bring, man. I mean, it's not all about knowledge and skills, right? Otherwise, I mean, like computers would have solved a lot of the stuff that, we still like battle with, right? So I think experience comes from two things. One is like your personal experience of like going through stuff, and second is like studying history, okay? Which I think in the business context, we just don't do
Yeah.
enough. Like, we just don't do enough. I keep telling people, right? Look, nothing you're solving is like entirely new. Someone has solved a version of this before, and likely, I mean, like countless times before.
Yeah.
Just go and bloody read up,
True.
right? And even if you have principles that can solve for 80% of what you're looking at, fucking amazing. Like today, I mean, nobody thinks about, oh, you know what, how should a landing page be?
Yeah.
I mean,
Because
it's
you have
it's
answers.
templatized,
Yeah, it is.
right? It's completely templatized. You know how, what has to come in the first fold and second fold and whatever and so on and so forth. You don't reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
right? There are a lot of problems that you're solving right now. Similarly, do have a precedence that you're just not looking at,
Right.
right? So I think that, right? I mean, so it's difficult for you to kind of experience every damn thing and then like have that learning and kind of solve
There's no time for that today.
things. There's no time, there's not enough money and so on, right? That I think you simply sometimes have to rely on history.
True.
Yeah.
That's a very good insight. I've always felt like all things that human beings do comes in patterns.
See, I was talking to someone, okay? Sorry to cut you off.
Sure.
So I was just talking to someone, and she's wondering how to scale her business from where they are right now to about like 4 times their size, right? 3 or 4 times their size. And she's like, what should I look at these products, these services, these markets? Should I add this? Should I hire this and whatnot? And I was just like, okay, look, I mean, like we debated and discussed all of these things. And I then told her that, look at a company which is like 2 cycles ahead of you, who is at that scale, and just work backwards. Look at what products or services they added. Look at what markets they looked at. I mean, you have it right there, right? I mean, it's staring at you in plain sight, right? Okay, I mean, you may not like copy that like to the T, right? But it'll at least show you a pathway forward, right? I mean, in terms of how it has to be. Like if I'm building a payments company today, right, in India, I mean, there are eminent benchmarks, right? I can look at Razorpay, I can look at Instamojo, I can look at like, I don't know, Pine Labs, etc., 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 and like figure, right? I mean, at least I'll know, okay, you know what? They can't make money on transactions. Heck, I will not make money on transactions, which means that I need to look at value-added services. Okay, what are the value-added services? Okay, lending is one of those things. Advertising may be another one, right? I'm not building a payments company today, I mean, and thinking that, I will charge like, 1 paisa on these transactions, and that's going to make me like God. I'm not doing that, right?
Right.
There's a template right in front of me. So,
This, with AI, there's this talk now that people are speculating that everyone will have their own personalized super AI, and then that'll build products for you, that'll build anything that you want, and then think of your entire life streamlined through a filter of one app, then which can interface with the other apps that are built. If assume you have your own personal management app, let's call it that, and then that interacts with the Swiggy if you need food, it interacts with a Zepto if you need quick commerce, if it interacts with maybe Amazon if you need to buy something, whatever it might be, right? And people are speculating that could be a future too. If everyone adopts it,
for sure.
right? If everyone starts building, because I also think at some level there will be a serious risk of security, of confidentiality, and all of those things that will start coming up, and then people want to protect themselves further and further. And if this technology is so democratized and everybody knows how to use it to some extent, there's only a matter of time before they make it for themselves in their own vision, right?
So, two things, right? So, the best framing of what possibilities are there with AI came from, I think, the most unlikeliest source. Okay, I mean, no, I won't say unlikeliest. I mean, but let's say, I mean, when you think of Nikesh Arora, right, the SoftBank guy, former SoftBank guy, and now like Palo Alto Networks CEO,
Yeah.
like you don't think of him as like the number one AI voice, right? But still, the best framing came from him. Okay, and I mean, he said a lot of things, but what I could glean from that was essentially your apps are going to be replaced by agents. Okay, your consumer app interface, think about it, right? That entire app interface interaction hasn't changed for like 50 years.
Yeah.
Right? Not 50 years. I mean, for as long as computing as we know it exists, right? Which is there's a screen,
Mac.
I type, and something happens, right? But that entire thing is up for disruption right now.
True.
Right? Because I can just book, I don't know, flight tickets, stay, etc. via this agent, and I really don't care whether it goes into like TripAdvisor or like I don't know, hotels.com or etc, right? I really don't care, right? As long as it gets me the best deal possible, right? And even if it gets that right about 90% of the time, I'll live with it. Right? Because even today, if I have to if I have to book a goddamn flight, right? I mean, it's just a crazy experience, man. First of all, that app interface is so fucked. I mean, I don't know, like, who the fuck is thinking about these things, right? I mean, we're talking about AI and everything, like, for fuck's sake, I mean, if you can just solve that for me, I mean, I'd be very happy, right?
Yeah.
Like, solve it, for God's sakes, right? It's so goddamn irritating, like, really, like, stressful experience booking tickets and whatnot, right? But if that happens, right, where I don't have to go and look at an interface, etc., and about 90%, 95% of the time, an agent is going to solve for that, I'm done. I'm very happy, right? It's pretty much. Now think about the app guys, okay? You've built your entire business around this whole interface, proprietary interface, okay? Now you now have to make a decision whether you're going to let these agents crawl, like source data from you, information from you, and make your app interface essentially redundant, right? Or you're going to hold back and say, no, you can't do that, right? And you're going to slowly lose business. You're going to bleed dry, basically. Now it's up to you. It's up to you whether you want to broker your deal and figure out like how you're going to go out or how you're going to evolve from that to something else, or you're going to bleed out, right? So overall, apps are going to be replaced by agents.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
right?
So you on your phone, you will have a Swiggy agent, let's say, assume.
No,
or
you just have your OS, man. I mean, like your Siri, basically, right? And you don't care. I mean, you won't even care if it goes into Zomato or Swiggy, right? I mean, think about it.
Unless there's a decision for you to make, for example, like price, and if you have to pick between them.
I don't care. Like I said, 90% of the time, if it gets it right, I'm okay living with the downside of 10%. Right?
But then if over time, if that compounds and then there's somebody else who's being smarter and
But it's
efficient,
only going to get more and more efficient. No. See, like...
So it'll pick the best price for you.
I still remember a time when Google search was actually a little slow.
Yeah.
Right? And then they start putting those seconds and what... I don't know at what time they just removed it or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? They used to put that it took this much seconds for a search or whatever, right? I mean, it's going to get better. Look at 4.0, man. GPT 4.0 is like faster than the previous one, obviously, right? So it's going to get more efficient for sure, right? But that's the writing on the wall. Apps are going to be replaced by agents.
Right. Very interesting. So a lot of UI UX design, for that matter, will probably have very little role to play going forward, right? In general.
I think you'll have to rethink for sure, right? It's not going to be it's not going to be your buttons and like form fills and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that seems like, I think it's going to become redundant.
Everything will be
for
voice
sure.
based.
Even if not voice based, right? I mean, it's going to be a very different type of interaction, right? I mean, look, Perplexity feels like magic to me,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the fact that I can just query and get exactly what I want and not have to browse like 5 pages, right? And filter results and information, it feels like magic to me,
Yeah.
right? So that's what is going to happen, right?
Yeah. Do you have kids?
No, not yet.
Do you think of the world that next generation of kids are going to be born into?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's going to be a... See, like I said, right? I think like what it means to be human will fundamentally change, you know, because how much of all of this stuff am I going to rely on AI and automation for versus like retain my own thinking on some of these things, right? Because look, it goes back to the question I asked you, right? Can you find your way around Bangalore without a map? I mean, there was a time when I went to some crazy corners of the city on my kinetic Honda with like a limited amount of fuel, and I could figure my way around, right? I mean,
Kinetic.
at least I had the skills to ask someone and like get to that place, right?
Yeah. A kinetic. That's
Yeah, dude.
That's not
OG
I thought
Bangalore.
Activa, but
No,
or Leo,
I
this is
had
even
a
before.
I had a like a 1980 something model kinetic Honda,
Wow.
and then I had an RX 100.
Oh,
Yeah.
proper.
Bangalore stuff, right? So you can't, and think about the things that you've lost because of that, right? Maybe you've lost some of that geospatial thinking, right? I seriously have a limitation on that front, right? I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to imagine like roads and like where we are and so on and so forth. Like, it's gone. I mean, I'm very happy that there's maps, right? But I've lost that, right? Maybe, I mean, people will lose the ability to ask like random strangers for like directions, right? And also filter like what they say with like, I mean, if you ask a guy and he says that, there is like this temple there and you turn right and then you'll find one like, chowdhury there, and then like, there's like a small river that, you have to verify that guy's like advice with another person's suggestion perhaps, right? Or I mean, you have to figure like, how to go about it and so on.
So, but by all that you're speculating, or we are speculating, it seems more like humanities, arts, these fields are going to get more interest, less in STEM, because I feel typically a lot of number crunching or going through a set process and then giving output and results can be made faster, better, more efficient with AI. But the other stuff that inherently, maybe say art, I know there's a lot of speculation that AI can also create art as good as any human, and it will get better probably, but I'm assuming that there'll be some kind of policies put in, like how in Hollywood now they're fighting that actors can't be replaced with AI, right? They're not allowing AI to, they're not allowing their molds or their sort of videos to be crafted for AI, and they're saying that it should be left. And fair, I think that's one way to safeguard human work capital or talent in some sense. I feel that'll spill over to art and music to an extent. That's my hunch, because people will just lobby against it. And that's what I feel will happen.
See, like I was having this conversation with a bunch of friends, and one of these guys just said like, look, I don't know what you guys are like stressing about. Everything is going to become absolutely easy and convenient, right? Now think about that for a second, right? Do you want everything to be easy and convenient? What is the downside of that?
True.
Right? Because let's look at the bull side of that, right? Everything becomes easy and convenient, right? We all sit by the beach and like we sip margaritas forever. Now tell me one person who's going to be happy with that.
Yeah. There's no challenge.
Forget about challenge. I mean, there's only a time period for which you're going to get like fucking annoyed after that, right?
Yeah.
After like a fourth margarita or something, you'll be like, I mean, like at least I need to go and climb like a tiny hill or something like that.
True.
Right? I mean, nobody wants that life. Everyone is deluded into thinking that all they want to do is like, watch the watch the waves crashing onto the shore and like, maybe like listen to their favorite song and drink their favorite cocktails and whatnot. There's only a while you can do that for, right? So really, I mean, I don't want to sound all Jordan Peterson on this, but I mean, what you're looking for in life is meaning, right? And that meaning inherently comes from the pursuit of something like difficult,
Yeah.
right? And I don't mean like artificially difficult. I mean like experientially difficult.
Yeah.
Like I feel like having a great relationship with whoever it is, like your spouse or your mom
Helps.
or someone else, is as difficult as like solving like the next technological, thing
For sure.
that you're doing at work or whatever, right? But it comes from that, right? So everything becoming easy and convenient and comfortable, I mean, may not be the answer to, like whatever it is you're looking for in life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did this mindset come to you? I know last time we touched upon it a little bit, but were you always someone who looked at it in this through these lens, or did a shift come somewhere when you decided to leave the refinery? Did some kind of enlightenment hit you?
No, man. I mean, it's like, see, once you're broke in life, right? I mean, you realize how little you need to like kind of really deeply be satisfied.
Yeah.
And then after that, right? I mean, there's a period when you start taking things for granted, and then that thing hits you again, right? That fuck, there was a time when you walked into a supermarket with about $100 and you had to plan your entire day around that, right? I mean, what meals you're going to get and so on and so forth. There was a time when you had to go into a wedding with, and you didn't have a decent gift to buy your best friend, right? Because you were broke. There was a time you couldn't afford like a good date, right? It hits you and it makes you like a little more grateful for what you have, right? So I suppose it's very organic. I mean, people have all been through those experiences. I think if you're a little more conscientious, like you kind of, you're able to center yourself a little bit, right? You're able to like come back to reality.
Right. And how do you encourage people to build this mindset?
Well, I mean, I don't say one thing or the other. I mean, it's helped me.
Yeah.
It's helped me. Like, I think gratitude is super important in life, right? It's the key to happiness, right? Because otherwise, I mean, look at all these like billionaire types. I mean, who are like, I mean, the billionaires are fine, I suppose, but think of all these 100 millionaires, right? I mean, they're always striving for the next 50 million and the next 50 million after that. I mean, one of the things that had like a deep impact on me was this guy, Rajat Gupta, okay, McKinsey. He went to jail, okay? He was worth about $100 million at the time he went to jail,
Why do you go to jail?
for insider trading.
Okay.
You have to look it up, okay? I mean, it's a fantastic case. And see, Rajat Gupta was, I mean, he was like the guy at the time, man. He was probably the most famous desi in the US at that time. Okay? Head of McKinsey. Okay, IIT Delhi, IIM somewhere else, or perhaps Chicago Booth or Stanford, I don't know, one of those places, right? 30 years at McKinsey, head of McKinsey. Like the head of bunch of these desi association is in the US. Has probably like, all world leaders, right? From Kofi Annan to, I think Bill Clinton to whoever else, right? One of those guys, right? And he went to jail for insider trading, and it wasn't like, I don't know how many millions it was. Like, I think maybe like a 5 million or 10 million sort of a thing, right? He's already worth 100 million and he like risked everything for that, right? And I just kept thinking about it, right? And I just asked so many people about like what drives someone to do that,
Just greed.
I don't know, dude. I mean, like it's I don't know. I mean, and the weird thing is, right? Whenever I see these things in certain people, I recognize that shit is in me also, right? I mean, because I'm also human, right? It's like that framing, right? Like they say, I mean, if you were to think back, you always think of yourself as like the victor, the person who's like the
protagonist,
the white knight, the protagonist, the hero. You never think from the perspective of the guy who did the stupid shit, right? I mean, and this Rajat Gupta thing just, and it happened around 2008, 2009 itself, okay? So it was formative years for me, and I kept thinking about it, right? What drives someone to do this kind of stupid shit?
Yeah, but I think greed exists at all levels, right? I think if you're a billionaire, you're probably getting away with it. That's the reality.
You have to figure a way to center yourself, man.
You have examples of that in the world? People who have found that balance?
I mean, like these are like no-name people, like, you know, folks won't recognize and so on. But yeah, I mean, I do see examples of folks who are like very happy, contented, and so on, right? I mean, living like the life that they have nothing to like. I mean, it's not like these guys are like monks or something that they don't want anything, but they don't lose sleep too much over like what they don't have, you know?
True. One name I've heard in the Indian corporate world probably is Shridhar Vembu from Zoho. So I know Bert, who owns California Burrito, really well. So we worked with him at one point in time. So he happened to mention first time about his interaction. I think he's an investor on Calibi, so I call it that. But yeah, he spoke about how simplistic and down to earth he is, and you'll never realize him if we walk past you and stuff. But apart from that, I haven't heard too many here. I just feel we are inherently very status driven as a society. So everybody likes to sort of show wealth and be there and, you know, do more than sort of pretend to be more than they're not. And as a function of which, then you always need to do that little extra, right? The greed automatically becomes a byproduct of that behavior. So
Yeah,
I guess we're all like in tune with it.
So I've spoken to Vembu sir a couple of times on the podcast. Okay, phenomenal guy. I mean, like perhaps like if you were to make a list of 10 or 20 people in India who are like true original thinkers, right, in business and tech, I mean, he's one of those guys. Right? Amazing, amazing guy. Super grounded. I've seen him speak as well. Like truly phenomenal personality, right? I mean, like an ideal example for people to kind of emulate, right? Now, I mean, Zoho does $1 billion plus of revenue, etc. I mean, arguably, like, no doubt he's a rich guy, right? I mean, he doesn't have to think about like.
Also, the journey. He's quite self-made in a sense that if you look at the journey, they're actually very bottom line focused.
Yeah.
As a company, so they
$0 of external funding,
Yeah.
right? Completely bootstrapped. Amazing journey, 25 plus years.
They hadn't
I mean,
too
I'm a massive Zoho fan. Okay, I mean, so
yeah, we use Zoho here.
So yeah, amazing guy. But look, I mean, when I think about wealth for people, right? I mean, again, just like a random tangent. There are a few different ways you can think about it, right? One is like in terms of like pure material stuff, right? Like, I mean, so I'm a guy who used to drink Royal Stag at one point of time, okay? And
Yeah.
I mean, okay? So I had standards then. I would not drink like Signature or RC. I would drink Royal Stag, okay? So, and then this guy who used to drink Royal Stag suddenly started sampling some better liquor, right, in 2018, 2019 or whatever, and kind of rediscovered this world of like single malts and, you know, expensive blends and whatnot. And I started thinking of myself as like a whiskey collector, okay? I mean, I would travel a fair bit as well, so I would get all these bottles and stock it and whatnot. And this one time, I mean, I almost bought like a Cavalila, I think it was like I don't know, what was it, 25-year-old or something, right? I mean, it's
how much did it cost?
Absurd fucking cost, okay? Like, I remember like doing that, I think it was
But why?
25,000. Wait, I almost bought it, okay? And my wife is very sweet. I mean, I just called her and I said, do you think I should get it? She's like, yeah, if you feel like it, why don't you get it? And so on. And in that conversation, right, I just realized, what the fuck am I doing, right? Buying like 25,000 bucks bottle, right? Absurd. It used to be my salary for a month at some point, right? The point is that you can chase that, and you can get like the newer watch and the newer whiskey and the newer whatever, and there's a certain tangent, right? I mean, like there's a certain tangent you can go. The second tangent, you can see like what money does for you in terms of, okay, I can take care of my mom a little better, right? I can afford a few things, right? Whether it's help or like certain products or certain services, etc., etc. I'm gonna like give it away, right? Like I do Arbit. I don't call it charity, but I just do Arbit things, right? I mean, like somebody I know, their grandfather is ill or whatever. I mean, give them some money. Don't think about it. The driver needs like an extra whatever. Okay, fine, whatever. Your Swiggy, etc. That's the second way you can think about it, right? Whether in terms of like, I mean, it's money to sort of enable people around you, so to speak, right? I mean, starting with your family to maybe your friends to like the broader world and stuff like that, right? And perhaps like the third tangent you can think of is like how much independence you have to live your own true authentic life. Okay, which is to say that, okay, I mean, I want to be able to work with the kind of people that I like, on the things that I like, when, where, everything, right? All of these things, I want to be able to decide that. Like, it will not have like a single percentage of monetary thought to it, right? And I think between all of these three things, right? I mean, like for me, like the third thing is what I'm just like endlessly fascinated by, right? I mean, like people think of like having fuck you money as like, literally having that amount of money that you don't end up doing anything, right? It's not really that, right? And this fuck you money also, it happens in stages, right?
Yeah.
Like I can genuinely say fuck you to some of the work that I would have gladly picked up like 5 years back, right? I mean, I'm sure it goes for you as well,
Yeah.
right?
For
So
sure.
I think those are three sort of tangents when you think of wealth as such, like what wealth can help you do.
You have a very entrepreneurial sort of mindset, from what
Is it?
yeah, I mean, it feels so because at least everything you just said maps to somebody who wants to do things on their own terms.
Look, I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't want to do like this whole Freudian analysis, like, okay, go into what dreams I've had and so on and so forth, all naughty dreams. Anyway, right? I mean, I don't want to do all that, but I grew up like a fat, dumb, I won't say dumb, naive kid, okay? And what that does to you is that it just like makes you really self-conscious, okay? And it makes you self-conscious to a degree where you're overthinking the shit out of everything, right? Right? Like there's no amount of weight that I can lose that'll make me think that I'm not fat. I'm pretty sure I'll be like at some 12 or 13% body fat at some point, hopefully, right? And I'll still think I'm fat. Okay? And it just seeps into everything, man. I mean, not just the way you look and whatnot, but like what you have, who you are, etc., etc., etc. There's a huge downside to that. Okay, the downside is that you suffer from massive like self-esteem issues, and like you let people like sort of tread all over you, so on and so forth, and which you have to work out for yourself and like figure like how to draw hard boundaries and like sort of live in the real world, right? But the positive side of that is that you always end up thinking through things, right? Nothing's been handed to you, so to speak, right?
Right.
So, and that's like a really lonely path, I would say. I mean, I don't recommend that to everyone, because a lot of these things, right? I mean, you can't just pick the upside. I mean, you like look at Elon Musk, for example, okay? I mean, I'm not comparing myself with Elon Musk, but, he says, I saw this in an interview, okay, and I genuinely felt bad, okay, because I could see it in his eyes. I mean, the interviewer was saying something to the effect of, like, man, it would be so amazing to be you. And he's like, you don't want to be me. My mind's a storm. Okay? Can you think about, how much must be going on in his fucking head? I mean, here we are, like, worried about some stupid ass who, like, kind of left a bizarre comment on your YouTube video or something, okay?
Yeah.
And think about his head, man. I mean, the entire, like, government's trying to bring the guy down, right?
He has a quote. He says, "I wake up, I work, I eat, I go to sleep. I have no other choice." So he does that apparently every day, rinse and repeat with absolutely no gaps in between. I mean, he's done that at different stages, and I can believe it because if you look at Twitter's turnaround when he took over and other things,
Amazing.
it just seems so.
Not just Twitter, right? See, like that entire firing 75% of Twitter and
Still hitting operational efficiency.
dude, forget about operational efficiency, right? I mean, the last year and a half of like Twitter, they've probably shipped more product than ever in their life,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that was an inflection point for the entire valley itself, right? Who had become accustomed to thinking that, okay, you know what, we need another 100 engineers to kind of ship this shit, right? And I mean, that's all gone. So, yeah.
Did he use AI?
Who? Elon?
Yeah.
He has Grok, right?
I mean when he revamped Twitter.
Dude, it's not even AI, okay? See, the thing is that there is no fresh thinking on a bunch of this stuff, okay? And because we just assume, right? I did say that you have to look at history and find precedents and so on and so forth. But often enough, you just have to call BS on some things, right? Like some things like, oh, you need 10 people to do this. Why? If you had only one person, how would you do it? Think about it. Think about it, right? Okay, maybe you won't solve it with one person, but maybe you'll need 3 then.
Yeah.
Not 10. Right? If I take every implicit assumption that, okay, you know what, like how people build marketing teams, right? I mean, they look at this company and they say, you know what, I'm going to have a performance marketer, I'm going to have a content marketer, I'm going to have an SEO guy, I'm going to have a product marketing person, I'm going to, like, fuck that. I mean, they're at a certain scale, they're at like 10 million revenue, and you want to like be them, so you just like copy the entire team structure or what?
Right.
And like day one, you have like six positions open. And all of these guys are going to do the 0 to 1 along with...
Yeah. No, but this is a real problem that you mentioned, that 0 to 1 was the 1 to 1, right? The number of people in India in general, when you meet, and then they're so obsessed with their immediate competition, what they're doing, or immediate reference, what they're doing, and then they just want to rip apart that entire thing and do it. It's in every walk of life, I feel.
Yeah.
And I feel there's something to do with the society in India where we inherently, I think, don't back innovation. At least it was. It's changing, of course, in many aspects, but there's a lot of things at a very mass scale which obviously you can't change in a short period of time. But I feel marketing is one of those. And I also feel it happens in every field where there isn't enough equity or acumen at a collective level, right? If you have 10 people, if all 10 aren't smart, this kind of problem can come. Where it's, where all of them are probably figuring it out and are at the same level, then the easiest path of least resistance becomes I'll copy what the next person's doing.
It's evolutionarily wired for us, right? I mean, like, look, I mean, thousands of years back, if you are the guy who ate the weird berry, you probably died.
True.
Right? Versus like, just like being the normie, so to speak, and like doing what everyone else did. Right? And that kind of thing is like hard grained in your head. Right? So, I mean, it's okay to think that way, but then, I mean, you also have to revisit it like from first principles as well, right? You don't need like 7 people to like do the 0 to 1, man. I mean, you first hire like maybe a couple and then figure from there, right? Who you need and in what sequence. I'm not saying you don't need them, but you don't need them now at this point. Or if you do need them now, you need to have you need to figure out everything else, right, for them to start working with you right now, which most people haven't.
True.